Ladies and gentlemen, this is your captain speaking, and I hope you're ready for another journey into the frustratingly vague, because this week I'm looking at Outlast 2, released in 2017. Outlast 2 was announced shortly after the first game's release, and remained silent until trailers were released in early 2016 with an intended release of that fall. In an interview, the easiest name to say, Philippe Mouhon, stated that the game was going to be largely based on the Jonestown Massacre of 1978, a mass suicide in a cult community in Guyana that resulted in the deaths of at least 900 people, including 300 children. Fun fact, that's where the term drinking the Kool-Aid comes from, as most of them died from drinking Flavor Aid laced with cyanide. Okay, not that fun, but it's a fact. A teaser released afterwards confirmed that the game would heavily rely on religious imagery, as if that wasn't obvious by the giant upside down cross in the logo. The game was ultimately delayed to the following April, and it was released to very mixed results. Some people loved it, some people hated it, and some people thought it was just alright. Which side of the coin do I fall on? You'll just have to find out right after you subscribe, or just wait like 3 more seconds. And as always, give it everything we've got! The game begins with our new crash test dummy, or protagonist, being awoken from a nightmare by his wife, Lynn. This time around, we are playing as journalist Blake Langermann, and he actually says things.
I was dreaming about Jessica Gray from when we were kids.
Oh, but by the end of the game, you'll wish he didn't. Blake and Lynn are currently flying over Supai, Arizona to investigate the murder of a young pregnant woman, and Blake gets caught in 4K so hard that God himself decides to interfere and crash the helicopter. Apparently the helicopter crashed into a school about 20 years in the past. Blake wanders the school and encounters the girl of his nightmares, who gives us the origin story for Mount Massive's lovely blood sewers. Blake wakes without his wife and goes on a search for her, equipping his camcorder because it's the only thing about this game that makes it feel like the original. He finds the wreckage of the helicopter and the body of the pilot, and just has the most insightful commentary.
That did not happen in the crash.
Really, Blake? Ya think? One of the new gameplay features is that Blake can look back on the segments he's recorded. Unlike Miles and Waylon, the camcorder isn't recording all the time, only actually recording footage of important events as indicated on screen. When looking back, he will add comments to the events, and it is rarely of any value. Blake wanders into a town filled with just the most helpful people, you know, when they aren't too busy mourning or being mourned. That wouldn't be Outlast without a steady stream of jump scares of varying effectiveness. Wandering further into town, Blake finds himself in a strange birthing facility, and where there's birthing facilities, there's babies! Emerging from that happy playland of joy, Blake has his first encounter with the Chris Walker of this settlement, Marta, a very tall lady that tries to kill you before Lady Dimitrescu made it hot, apparently. I never understood it. Escaping Marta leads us to one of the only reminders that Blake has glasses, since it is never important to the story or gameplay at all, and the one and only new gameplay mechanic introduced. Blake's camcorder has a microphone attached to it, which he can use to detect sounds and where they are coming from. This isn't a huge new thing, but it allows you to more easily pinpoint enemy locations in the larger open areas you'll be in for most of the game. And that's one of my main problems with Outlast 2. The claustrophobic setting of Mount Massive Asylum is replaced with this stereotypical cult town, and it really hurts the amazing gameplay mechanics of the first. This game still tells you to run, hide, or die, but it's more like run or die, since there are like 2 hiding spots in the entire game, and enemies will either find you immediately or basically camp where you're hiding.
What the fuck? Man, fuck this bitch. How the fuck did you find me?
Blake ends up getting noticed by a group of townies because, as you'll continue to see, Blake sucks at doing legitimately anything, but is saved by another flash of light and accompanying sound effect. This strange mix of a flashbang and scarecrow toxin allows Blake to progress towards a chapel, and hear someone's voice being broadcast saying something that comes off kinda preachy, not gonna lie.
You know what God says? God said unto Moses, I am that I am, and that's all there is to it.
That is the voice of Father Sullivan Knoth, the de facto main antagonist of this game, and I will not be talking about him until we physically see him in person, so just hang tight. He's the main antagonist, surely we'll see him soon, right? Right? Blake enters the chapel and, for no given reason, doesn't go through the clearly open doors to find Lynn, instead going the long way around through a makeshift prison ward where he finds a note about someone named Val, and the fact that I'm bringing attention to this means that it isn't relevant to the story whatsoever. Continuing on, Blake eventually sees Lynn just escape by herself because she's a strong independent woman that don't need no and she's been captured again. But have no fear, people are here to save us. oh, never mind, they're worse. Since this game sees Five Nights at Freddy's vagueness and laughs, we barely learn anything about these people, so allow me to fill you in. Those people who just attacked the cultists are the Heretics, a group of people who defected from the cult but decided not to leave the settlement for reasons. And their very predatory leader there is Val, who is apparently transgender. Did she kill Based Chris?
Not cool.
I don't really give a fuck about her gender, though. Anyone who licks my whole face without consent is getting kicked into next Friday. Oh, and the whole kidnapping my wife thing is bad too. Also, both sides of this conflict believe Lynn to be pregnant with the Antichrist, which is just what I call every child. It comes as a surprise to Blake and Lynn, though. They haven't tangled in a while, probably because Blake's too busy dreaming about schoolgirl Jessica like a weirdo. Speaking of school dreams, another flash of light and Inception sound effect send Blake back to school, and really that notion is the scariest thing in this game. Blake sees an ominous note from Jessica that implies exactly what you think it does. Attempting to watch that footage back will just result in static. Blake, maybe you should invest in a better camera that can see into dreams. Then he wanders outside. You know, Blake, with how much you think about Jessica, it's almost like you're falling for her. Literally! This man is Ethan, the only man in this entire fucking game that doesn't try to kill you. He mentions that his wife was scald and has a very disturbing Knoth story to tell.
Didn't complain with Nah. Pressed himself on my Annalie. And she not but 15.
Yeah, and as we'll find out throughout the game, this isn't a one-time occurrence. Knoth does this on a regular basis regardless of age. Blake realizes that Ethan's daughter is the Jane Doe that led them here, and Ethan allows Blake to rest for a while in his sorta basement where he gets yet another Jessica dream. So let me get this straight. Blake's wife has been captured by a group of religious nutjobs, and Blake is currently sleeping and dreaming about other women. Not cool, Blake. Unlike Blake, Ethan's a stand-up guy. Shame his fate was sealed the second he started helping Blake's dumbass.
God, don't hear dead man.
Like Traeger before him, Ethan is my favorite character in this game. And not just because this game is filled with mostly shit characters. He's just a man who thought he could believe in Knoth, only for Knoth to steal and kill everyone he loved. Plus, he risked and lost his life protecting a man he just met. Blake keeps on keeping on, eventually coming across some dudes just hanging out, and it's getting pretty heated. Anything to say about that, Blake?
They flayed them. Nailed them to wood. She was just a kid.
I don't think one of those sentences belongs there, buddy. After a quick game of hide and seek in a cornfield and a peaceful stroll through town, Blake enters a body packing facility and decides it's time to pay homage to a Miles Upshur classic and falls into a nice pile of dead body chunks. It's not long after that another Inception beat drops, and so do the birds. Ooh, now we're in a weird heretic temple that looks strangely like that Joker shrine from Harley Quinn's Revenge. What do you have to say about that, Blake?
He said she did it to herself. He said he was protecting you.
That's not even kind of related to what you just recorded. Well, maybe if we leave and take a quick walk, it'll clear your Yeah, if you hadn't figured it out yet, Jessica forced quit the game of life when they were kids. Why, you ask? Well, stick around and find out, because it's one of the only fucking questions this game bothers to answer. Getting closer to the chapel where Lynn supposedly is, Blake finds possibly the most disgusting thing I've ever read, and another note in the same house proves it was written by Val, in case you needed more proof that she's disgusting. He eventually stumbles across an elevator, which, of course, doesn't work. So he has to sneaky snake his way around some cultists to get to the power generator station and reactivate it. His return trip is temporarily slowed by Marta and her weird screams, which is pretty easy to avoid. You can pretty much just sprint right into the elevator and she won't be able to do anything. Our knowledge is raised alongside Blake's elevation as we finally learn the name of this ironically godforsaken place. Temple Gate. Then, Blake begins to hear something that definitely doesn't belong. Oh, well that's just swell, and it's coming from that well, so let's investigate. Ah, hell. Oh, now we're back in school. That's just great. This time, Blake hears Jessica's cries for help, some sinister laughter, and sees Jessica just hanging around before she gets licked up by something that would make even Gene Simmons jealous. Now we're back in the... of course. Running from this next band of Temple Gateites brings Blake into this room, which Blake claims is where the magic happens, because when Outlast 2 isn't being boring, it's being gross. Blake just up and leaves that poor girl there, leading into yet another chase with these hillbilly f***s that lands Blake in a school, but a school of the present, not a school of the past. They're equally as nightmarish though, with this school teaching kids that they might be Satan, and as a result may just be killed by Knoth at any time. But at least they get to draw angels, that's good. Blake hops a gate that is connected to the playground of the school because this place cares almost as little about the safety of children than America's public school system, and once again has to tango with Marta, this time having to push a cart to hop a fence, which she will occasionally interrupt. Jumping the fence brings Blake to the chapel, where he finds a note from someone named Laird Byron, talking about his weird flock of people with sores. Hopefully we never have to meet them. He soon finds there is no Lynn here, just a man more carved up than a jack-o'-lantern. He demands that Blake kill him before Knoth brings his wife into torture, as he knows Lynn's location. Instead of doing the smart thing and asking where Lynn is and then killing the man so Knoth and co can't find out, Blake does what Blake does best and just hides while someone else does all the work. Knoth enters the chapel with the man's wife, and we finally see him in person for the first time. And it's only about 2 hours into this roughly 4-hour game. Well, this game turns into Saw and makes you watch as Knoth tortures the couple. Allow me to teach you about this rather unholy father of this community. Father Knoth here is our stand-in for Jim Jones, the leader of the Real People's Temple and orchestrator of the mass suicide. Like Knoth, Jones believed himself to be a prophet warning against the end of the world. The most valuable information Jones was given was to find an enemy and to make sure his followers know who the enemy is, as it would unite his followers against the enemy and make them more subservient to him. It's a good thing no one else in any prominent position of power besides Knoth is using a tactic promoted by Father Divine and Adolf Hitler. There's one more important detail about Knoth, but I'll save that fun little tidbit for later. Thanks to witnessing literal torture, Blake learns that Lynn is being held in the mines, wherever those are, and sets out to find them. And by sets out to find them, I of course mean immediately enters another fucking chase scene. This chase brings Blake to a watermill, where he has to turn a crank to open a gate, leading to another chase scene! This one ending with Blake dropping right into Marta'S land. But we've seen her a bunch of times tonight, and this place is huge, so what are the odds that she's actually— oh god damn it. This is one of the most annoying set pieces in the game, as Marta'S land is pretty sizable, and you have to escape from her by finding the smallest gap in one of the fences that is incredibly hard to both find and see, especially if you're being chased, and odds are that's exactly what's happening. The Blake escape happens to place him right in front of a sign advertising the mines because they put a collective 5 seconds into thinking about how to combine all of their set pieces. Speaking of non-existent transitions, I bet you can guess what happens when Blake jumps that door. Did you guess it? Of course you did! Alright, I'm getting real tired of your bullshit, Blake, so let's run through this. He solves an unforgiving hangman, gets a standing ovation from a bunch of lockers, gets hugged by a tongue demon, and crawls into the exact vent system where he began the previous school journey. Blake mentioned this earlier, but each school segment takes place farther and farther back in time. Somehow, Blake continues to progress in those school nightmares and begins to cross the bridge over the mines. If you've learned anything from these reviews, you know something is about to go wrong, so let's see what it is this time. Locusts, sure, why not? Blake awakens hanging from a tree and sees a strange figure shoot a man and walk away. He frees himself and is now in the land of the Scald. But who exactly are the Scald? Well, they're people Knoth has accused of having a spiritual sickness that have been cast aside essentially to die, when in reality they're infected with syphilis and gonorrhea, which they received from Knoth himself. But that doesn't stop him from having unprotected and usually unconsensual sex with any woman he chooses, again, regardless of age. Since it's been a good, 5 minutes since our last chase scene, you know we're due for another one. This one ending with Blake squeezing between a wall and— oh, come on! We were just here! Absolutely nothing of value happens, and then he's back in a log and crawls into the waiting arms of this big man and his rider. The smaller one is Laird, who we heard about earlier, and the big man is Nick. They're the rulers of the Scald, basically. Laird guarantees that Blake will get at least 10 diseases by force-feeding him some blood and labels him the Scald Messiah. Now it's time for Blake's finger-cutting leg-breaking moment, and given all the religious bullshit in this game, I will give you absolutely nothing if you can guess what it is.
Well, old Nick, I guess we better put those nails in. Wait! Ah! 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 Ah!
Blake rips himself off and patches himself up, then sets out to find his camera. Alright, let's check everything off the list. Chase scene? Check. Poor level design and annoying AI? Check. And a random bullshit school section? Check. This time, Blake gets a phone call.
Hello? Hello? Oh, thank God you're alive. I need you to stay calm. We're going to get you help. We'll get you out of there. I want you to find a place to hide. Someplace safe where you can remember the taste of her kiss when you felt her neck break, you diseased cocksucker.
Riveting stuff. The real world isn't much better, as Blake is immediately thrust into a chase scene with Laird and Nick, who has pinpoint fucking accurate aim with his bow, and this one ends with Blake getting caught in barbed wire and buried alive. But these fucking morons only buried him under like half an inch of dirt, so he gets out with ease. Hey Blake, how do you feel about getting caught in barbed wire?
Pieces of my skin stuck in the barbs. It was too late to hold her up. And I was just a kid.
Why do I even bother? Blake lowers himself down using a rope he took from a man who doesn't need it anymore, and his attempt to lower himself down is interrupted by Laird and Nick, but they're betrayed by the Skald and pushed to their death. Blake climbs out into— oh my god, it just doesn't end. Blake emerges near a lake where he notices a radio tower off in the distance that will definitely be important later. Speaking of will definitely be important later, off in the middle of literal bumfuck nowhere is the most important note in this game, despite the anachronism of this game taking place in 2013 and the note being dated 2015. Keep them both in mind. Blake finds a raft to cross the lake on, and his water rafting journey leads to the one and only thing it can lead to in this game. Blake has some crimson showers and re-enters the real world to have an even bigger crimson shower. With all the shit, sometimes even literally, that Blake has been through, any shower is a fucking gift at this point. At least he's at the entrance to the mines now, so he can finally— I am so fucking tired of this shit! But it's not all bad. Here's one of the only good scenes in the game. Blake's licked back to reality, and we're already back. There's a whole squad of Jessicas just hanging around, and Jesus falls off the wall because Subtlety's dead. Okay, now we're back for real, and Blake's running from the—
God fucking damn it! I'm done! I'm fucking done! This is bullshit!
Nothing important happens before Blake finally crash lands in the mines, and we're now in the worst section of the game. It's just a constant barrage of different annoying bullshit until he finds Lynn and is ambushed by Val. The game then once again flashes back to the school to hide the fact that— well, let's just say Val groped Blake, but the O is an A and there's no G. We see that Jessica never actually followed the instructions of the family-friendly news song. Instead, she was killed by this teacher, who has been represented by the tongue monster this whole time. Also, if you reverse the audio that plays during the static videos and listen to them in reverse order, you'll hear a series of statements from this man's perspective on Jessica's murder. Back to people who aren't dead, at least not yet, Blake finds Lynn outside. Alright Blake, what's the plan?
We'll find a grown-up and we'll tell him what happened. We'll be okay.
A grown-up? Dude, you're an adult man. The Langermanns make their way outside through the storms of the apocalypse. Blake drops his pregnant wife like the great husband he is. Marta fucking dies, and they take shelter in the chapel where Lynn gives birth.
There's nothing there.
Oh, Jesus God!
Ah, cool, so you're telling me this entire journey was fucking pointless because Lynn was gonna die no matter what? Got it. Knoth shows up in legit only the second appearance in this entire fucking game and goes in one of the ways I fear most, and Blake leaves to witness the world end. And that's how the game ends. Go fuck yourself. Since apparently it's my job to explain everything, let's start from the top. Sullivan Knoth was a down-on-his-luck man who started hearing a voice in radio static that he believed to be God. He had a vision of himself leading a group of followers to paradise through the apocalypse, and not long after, gathered up a group of devout followers and set up Temple Gate. While not explicitly confirmed, it's very likely this was all Murkoff's doing as a means to spread the morphogenic engine. Those radio towers from earlier are Murkoff's, as proven by the very hard-to-find note that mentions a woman named Jenny Rowland, a name that appears attached to an autopsy report document you can find in the first game. Yes, that is the only physical connection this game gives you. The only other evidence is that while watching back the static videos of things you recorded in the Nightmare world, the Murkoff logo will occasionally be seen very briefly. That's it. For the rest of the information, you have to read the Murkoff account comics released after the second game that only exist to connect the two games because Outlast 2 did such a shit job. First and foremost, the Jane Doe that led to Blake and Lynn's arrival at Temple Gate was killed by Pauline Glick, a main character in the comics. When Lynn showed up asking questions, someone was tasked with making sure they stayed away from Temple Gate, and they clearly did a great job. Essentially, the light and sound that emanate from those radio towers is a sort of hypnosis blast, giving everyone affected personal hallucinations that deteriorate their mental state and make them more susceptible to hypnotic suggestion. Murkoff used Knoth and his followers to create a way for the morphogenic engine to spread faster, as religion was apparently just as viable as madness. This also explains Lynn's pregnancy confusion, as there is a single offhand comment in one of the comics that is crucial to understanding one of the central concepts of this game. Jeremy Blair, remember him, mentions that the women employed at Mount Massive were experiencing psychosomatic pregnancies as a result of being around the morphogenic engine. Basically, their mind and body believing they were pregnant when they actually weren't. That's what happened to Lynn. The radio tower hypnoblasts were tied to the morphogenic engine, and it made everyone really believe she was pregnant. And since Blake was basically a lost cause after so much exposure while Lynn wasn't nearly as exposed, she didn't see any baby and Blake did. The world ending is also explained in the comics, as the Wall Rider takes control of a swarm of ants to knock down one of the radio towers, creating a large blast of light and sound that is most likely perceived by Blake to be the end of the world. The comic also shows that Blake is still alive, albeit completely catatonic. So on the success scale, he failed to do the one thing he set out to do and completely lost his damn mind in the process, but he made it out alive. So I'd put him above Miles and below Waylon. He didn't underachieve, he didn't overachieve, he just achieved. I kinda said this earlier, but this game has 3 modes: boring, annoying, and disgusting. It's not scary, and that is the worst thing you can say about a horror game. The switching between Temple Gate and the school just doesn't work, as the school sections only serve to completely chop up the pacing, which is unfortunate since the school sections are far superior. The whole game should have been set there. The game's utter refusal to explain a fucking thing doesn't help either, as you spend the whole game completely confused and just never getting any answers. The ending completely invalidates the whole fucking game, and the lack of follow-up on the first game's events tanked what could have been an amazing sequel. Outlast 2 gets a 3 out of 10. The game may look great, but there's nothing beneath that appealing surface. Hopefully Red Barrels can turn things around with the Outlast trials next year. But next week, actually, I can't remember what game comes next week. I hope to see you there.